Welcome, Caz Tanner, to the Self-Help Songwriter podcast.
Thanks, Hannah. It's great to be here with you.
Yay, I'm so happy that you're here. I am obsessed with your new podcast, Further Reaches. It is like exactly the type of podcast that I've been wanting for such a long time. And it's also like we've had similar conversations about themes like this. And you always have such a unique perspective and also such an organized way of like presenting information and processing. So I feel so happy and proud that you're sharing that with the world. It's so valuable and people are loving it. So how does that feel to be finally going with the podcast and Further Reaches?
Thanks, Hannah. It feels really good. And it's like such a good exercise in just like letting go of caring what people think about you. Like for a long time, I wanted to do a podcast, but I was just afraid. I was afraid like what people would say, what people would think. And like with my podcast, I'm trying to be really authentic and I'm trying to talk about things that I'm deeply interested in that like some people might label as like woo-woo. Like I'm really interested in the intersection of science and spirituality. So yeah, I didn't do the podcast for a long time because I was like, I don't want people to know about the spiritual side of me. But the truth is that doing the podcast is allowing people who have shared interests to find me and be magnetized to me. So yeah, it's okay if some people don't like it, but yeah, I'm attracting the tribe of people who are very into it.
I love that. Yeah, that's so important. And that's like such a beautiful byproduct of just openly being yourself and being authentic and letting go is that then, yes, it allows that resonance to happen between like-minded people. So that's like really beautiful. So tell me, what is we are on the Self-Help Songwriter podcast. So I have to ask you, what is your relationship to music?
Well, I feel like because we are good friends, I would say in the last year and a bit, I've gone through some like kind of hard times and you were actually really helpful in guiding me to like, hey, like I think it would really help you if you like listen to this song or like here's a playlist I made. I think you really like drew my attention to like how music has the power to like firstly like shift your mood, like shift your vibration, and then also like to help process things. You know, I went through like a pretty bad breakup about a year and a half ago, and you encouraged me to just like listen to those heartbreak songs. Like it really allowed me, like, you know, because sometimes music can convey a feeling that you don't have words to express. So I'd be like, this song is how I'm feeling. And I feel like sometimes I even sent you a song like this is what it's like right now. And that's helpful. So yeah, you've really like helped enlighten me to how I can use music for self-help. And then you know, I'm interested in going on journeys, whether that's doing breathwork journeys or psychedelic journeys, and music is always a very big part of that. And so I'm very interested in the science behind how music can create your thoughts and create the experiences that you can have in journeying.
I love that you brought this up. That is such a huge way that also music has affected me that I've never talked about here on this podcast because yeah, you introduced me to holotropic breathwork and that was like whoa. And and so the music for me during that experience was everything. It really kind of dictated the process for me almost. It was incredible, and it almost was like the breath work just opened me up to be healed by the music in a way. It feels like a dance
Yeah.
between the music and, like, your inner healer. Um, so yeah, say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and holotropic breathwork, which was designed by Stan Groff. He was one of like the prominent LSD researchers in the 70s. And then when LSD became illegal, he was like, how can I find a way to study altered states? So he developed holotropic breathwork, which is basically you do deep breathing for 3 hours. And there's 3 different sections of music. So the first hour, it's very like tribal, drum based, intense. Like some of the songs kind of feel kind of like angry. It's just, yeah, upbeat. And so for that first hour, it's like an opportunity to like release whatever like anger or emotions might be stored up. The second hour is designed to be more emotive, and there's lots of like kind of like sad songs that make you want to cry. And then the third hour, it's more like chill relaxation, this kind of like chanting, ethereal vibes. But yeah, I think that the music is like just as big a part of the experience as doing the breathing. And because breathing puts you in an altered state, it's cool how you can engage with the music differently. Yeah, during the sessions.
That's amazing. And do you know for other types of journeys, not just breathwork, but like psychedelic journeys, do they also use music in a similar way, or is that a lesser part of the experience?
Yeah, that's a really big part of the experience. There's a lot of research being done with Johns Hopkins University. They're doing like psilocybin psychedelic assisted therapy, and you can actually find the Johns Hopkins playlists on Spotify. So they're curated in a similar way, where they know the types of things that will happen at each stage of the journey. Typically it's like 4 or 5 hours, so it can help guide you through that. And yeah, I think it helps intensify feelings and emotions, which is what you're doing oftentimes in those settings.
I love this. I'm so happy that we're talking about this. Again, I feel like people don't talk about that enough in the psychedelics conversation or in the transcending conversation. Also, okay, I just said the word transcending, so I'm going to ask you next about meditation. You just released the best episode about meditation. People go listen to it right now if you're like, I don't know about meditation, but I'm sure you'll say a little bit right now. But tell me about your journey with meditation and transcendental meditation also.
Yeah, I first learned a style of meditation when I was about 22, through an organization called Art of Living, and it was kind of a mix of like breath work and meditation. And it was really intense. The whole thing took like 30 minutes, and you're supposed to do it every day. And I was like, oh, I can't keep up with that. Then I tried using like Headspace and Insight Timer to do some like guided meditations, which were helpful. And then probably 3 years ago, I learned transcendental meditation. And that's where you are given your own special mantra, which is a sound that you repeat in your mind. And you're not supposed to tell anyone else what that sound is. And the idea is that having this mantra repeated in your mind, it gives something for your monkey mind, the busy chattering part of your mind, to focus on. So then the other parts of your being can open up to experience like another dimension of reality, which is what they call like transcending. And it's interesting because I feel like in the beginning, when I first learned transcendental meditation or TM, I often had these experiences that felt just like completely bliss states, where I would just like feel like I melted into this feeling of oneness, and it felt so good. And then it went away. And my teacher was telling me that the point is that you shouldn't be like seeking to feel any sort of like mood or way. Like the point is that you're basically like through the process, you're like clearing out your mind. It's kind of like a good analogy is like brushing your teeth. You're like getting rid of all of this like mental plaque and build up. And I wasn't experiencing these blissed out states. So I stopped meditating. I remember I stopped for about a week. and I noticed how different I felt. I was like much more anxious. I was feeling more reactive. I was feeling more like annoyed with people and situations. And I was like, wow, okay, it does make a difference. Like, even if I'm not going into this like bliss, transcendental state every time, it definitely is making a difference. And then recently I've been studying more like mindfulness based meditation, in like a framework of more of like a John Kabat-Zinn, like Buddhist approach, which is more just like watching your thoughts, um, and becoming aware of the voice in your head, of what it sounds like when you notice that you've forgotten what you're doing. So in mindfulness, you're supposed to set something to focus on. Usually it's the breath. So you're like, okay, I'm going to focus on the breath. Then inevitably your mind wanders and you start thinking about something else. It could be anything. It could be like, what am I going to make for lunch today? Or like you're worrying about a conversation you need to have with a colleague. That's your default mode network part of your brain that's all like chattering and distracted. And then something amazing happens as part of your brain. It's a network called the salience network that comes online, and it's like, hey, you got distracted. Like, we're supposed to be focusing on the breath. And it like guides you back to like, okay, let's focus on the breath again. But yeah, people's salience network has a different voice. So for some people, it could be really mean and like, hey, you idiot, you're supposed to be focusing on the breath. Like, what's happened? And you can like work with yourself to be nicer. Like, I don't need to like speak so harshly to myself. Like, I know for me, it used to kind of be a voice of like my mom telling me off like I'm a little kid. But yeah, I've kind of worked with it, and now it's more of like a gentle nudging, like, hey, like, let's get back to breathing. So yeah, there's lots of different types of meditation. And it's fun to like explore all of the different kinds.
That's amazing. And how would you recommend that people start if someone has only had very frustrating experiences previously with meditation, or just anticipates a very frustrating experience with meditation? How would you recommend that they approach it?
I would say that it's so important to just get consistent with it. Like, it takes at least like 2 to 3 weeks to like build up a new habit of doing anything. And you're probably not going to notice like a big difference just from doing like one meditation session. Like, it's really something that like combines over time. And I think that sometimes meditation, it's almost like there's this false advertising around it of like, you should meditate. Like, it's relaxing, it's a relaxation technique. And some sorts of meditation are relaxing and it can be relaxing. But often what happens in meditation is because you're sitting there with yourself, with your inner thoughts, it allows uncomfortable thoughts to come to the surface. And so part of learning to meditate is learning to sit with discomfort and allowing it to happen. So if you're interested in trying meditation, I think it's important to go in with the expectation that it could feel uncomfortable, and that is part of it. Like, let's say that you haven't been brushing your teeth for 5 years and you have cavities. Like, you're going to have to go to the dentist and it's going to hurt and it's going to be unpleasant, but it's like we're filling in those holes and like getting your oral hygiene back. So yeah, with your mental landscape, it's similar. Like, if you haven't like sat with what's underneath the surface, it could be uncomfortable at first, but I promise you that if you stick with it and do it over time, that yeah, you'll notice a big difference.
I love that. That's great advice. I think just do something consistently, and make that commitment, and learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mhm.
That's like part of the mental discipline in a way that it teaches you. It's just like a little practice of what life is. Like, life is a meditation. I feel like for me, eventually now, like I meditate, but everything follows that pattern of like coming back to center. Like, everything is like a reminder, okay, this and then this. And yeah, that awareness, like everything is an opportunity for awareness. So like the more you meditate, it almost like seeps into every facet of your life. And like kind of brings that spaciousness into it, which is like so helpful if you're trying to be happy and regulated and enjoy your life. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's like it's not like you're gonna be the most like zenned out person ever if you're meditating, but you're more
No.
likely like if someone says something that's annoying and you have a thought that's like, oh, like I hate this person, blah blah blah. You're more likely to notice like, oh, I just had a really judgmental thought about this person, and you're faster to notice, and then it's easier to be like, okay, I'm gonna choose again a better, more compassionate way to see this situation. So yeah, it's really about like getting your mental reflexes to be faster to help like bring your mind back into kind of more compassionate place.
Exactly. I love that. And that like ties into I had a solo episode the other week about being your own friend, and just a big part of that is understanding like the difference between you and other people and where the border is there. And oftentimes I feel like, especially women or people who are very empathetic or creative, we can tend to conflate other people's comfort with our comfort, and that meditation is like really, I think, the best tool to be able to actually eventually be able to separate your emotional state from other people's emotional state, kind of untangle and become less codependent and more like emotionally sovereign. So I love, yeah, I love that you
Yeah.
said that.
I actually spoke to someone this morning who is like a mom of three, and she was like, I saw you had a podcast about meditation. I just feel like I don't have time. Like I have these children, they're demanding so much from me. And like something that one of my favorite meditation teachers would say is like meditating gives more time than it takes. And that's because when you meditate, it makes you feel calmer. And when you approach a situation with more calm, like space and time expands. Like let's say that you're like running late to go to an appointment. Like that late feeling, that frantic feeling, it just feels like everything is like out of control and there's a sense of chaos. But when you're meditating, you kind of have this feeling of like everything's fine. I have time. It's going to get done in time. It just makes things feel more expansive, and yeah, I get more done. I'm more productive, even though I'm dedicating like 20 minutes a day to meditation.
That's so true, and I think people think that that, like, sounds slower, but actually, like, when you have a frantic energy, you're gonna be doing a lot of wasted energy. You're going to be doing
Yeah.
things without any reason to be doing them. You don't think clearly.
Hmm.
So, I think of, like, yeah, like a ninja or something like, some sort of martial arts, this, like, very that because there are some, I need to look more into this, but certain types of meditation and martial arts, I know they're kind of overlap somehow. But and they can move super fast, but it's this economy. It's really economy of motion and economy of energy, and you're learning to preserve your own energy and
Hmm.
not conflate everything. It's just you see things more clearly.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think the frantic energy actually leads to wasting time and wasting energy for sure.
Yes. So I want to ask you, I know, how do you use music in your like a day-to-day life? Like what is your relationship with music like besides like outside of these experiences that we talked about earlier? Just like in your personal yeah, like day to day.
Well, I'm currently very into like finding playlists on Spotify that people have made that are like for a certain mood. And I recently had this realization that like the words that you're listening to in songs like can affect you. And maybe it's like subliminally, but I was listening to songs that maybe were like, I don't know, sad and heartbreaky. And so I recently made this conscious effort to be like, I'm going to find these like empowering playlists. And they definitely exist. Oh, sorry, the dog is barking.
Aw.
I started just like typing in words. Like there's a song by Sia called Unstoppable. And there's
Yes.
loads of Unstoppable playlists where it's all like similar songs. Yeah, with like uplifting, empowering lyrics. So I love that. Um, I listen to music when I study because I'm in school. I listen to like music that has binaural beats in it, and that helps me with my focus. There's different binaural beats. There's some that help you fall asleep. There's some that help you feel focused and energized. And then I mostly listen to music when I work out now. So yeah, just high energy, pump me up music. And
Love it.
I used to go to a lot of live music. Like you and I have gone to music festivals together. And since COVID, that's something that hasn't really like come back into my life yet. But yeah, I miss it. And there's something really special about seeing music performed live and like the energy that's shared with everyone in that room or in that venue. So yeah.
That couldn't have been more perfect because I wanted to ask you next about, yeah, what's your most powerful memory of live music? Like what's your favorite memory live music experience?
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Or
I
one
have to
of
think
them.
about it.
Top 5, one of them. What comes to mind when I say that?
I think probably we went to Bonnaroo together and
Yeah.
we saw Dark Side of the Moon performed live. It wasn't by Pink Floyd. Who was it? It was
Flaming Lips.
Flaming Lips. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was amazing because I just remember there being like all of these like inflatable balloon things that were being like passed around the audience. But the effect of that was like it was like connecting all these people in this really like fun, playful way. And I just remember feeling like all of the spectators, we were all just like kids in this playground, and like everyone there was like so into the music. It's such a well-known album, so everyone was like singing along. um a cool light show.
Just
So yeah,
iconic.
that's one that sticks out in my memory.
Yes. I have a different memory of that. But I also remember that part of it, but that's not what I remember the most, and I'm not gonna share that here. Um, it's not too crazy, but, it's not relevant either. Um, yeah, so we have to get you out to some more live music in this summer, yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Okay. So let's wrap this up. Let's tell people like where they can find you on the internet.
I mostly hang out on Instagram, and my handle is Caz_Tanner. And then I also have a website, which is CazTanner.com. And you can also find my podcast on YouTube if you like watching video podcasts. So yeah,
Yes.
youtube.com/further reaches. Oh yeah, and my
Yes.
podcast, Further Reaches, on all podcast platforms.
Yes, and I will put links to everything in the description. I'm just obsessed with everything that you said. Like every single question that I had was just like such a perfect little answer that you have. I'm just so satisfied with like the amount of clips I'm going to be able to get from this and the amount of like actual practical information and I think new information that I think a lot of the listeners are going to just like eat up. I'm so excited. Yeah, especially that reminder about the holotropic breath work, the music that they use there, that's so interesting. Thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your incredible wealth of knowledge. We didn't even like barely get into the stuff that you know, but people can go check out Further Reaches. And yeah, it's so aptly named. So I won't make any jokes about that, but it's so perfect. So they can reach further on Further Reaches. I did it anyway. Um, Kaz, thank you so much for being here. You're amazing.
Thanks, Hannah. It was so fun being on your podcast. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, anytime. I'll have you back too, I think. So,
Deal.
yes. Talk soon.